Hi, Helen from crystalsandcrochet.com here. In this video tutorial I want to show you how you can make plain squares totally seamlessly. Okay, so even with a tiny little square like this, where you make your new stitches, you move up to the next row and you'll either start with a chain start or a standing stitch. You're always going to get this seam. The bigger the square gets, the more obvious this seam becomes, so you can always sort of see where you've joined. And even if you try using a magic knot and joining and changing colours, it can really get quite ugly sometimes. So what I want to show you, as I've got here, is a totally seamless square. Okay, so there's no join coming up through the middle of the square, because obviously each time if you join into, let's say we join into this stitch here, then we're going to start this next one and we end up with this skinny stitch if we go with chains, or we end up slightly bulky like this if we work with standing or starting stitches. If you're changing colour and you start with a standing stitch, then you have no problem. Okay, now this is the area where I'm actually joining and moving on. Okay, so I have just finished this round and I've joined into a chain 3 here with a slip stitch. Okay, so what we need to do is to move into the corner. Okay, and a lot of the time it can get a little bit messy, but again, if you know your stitch anatomy, you've got your post, you've got your top loops there, and you've got your third loop, that's the one that goes diagonally across. So make your slip stitch under the top 2 loops only, so that it's not catching this third loop. Okay, and then take your slip stitch into your corner space. So when you come around to make a stitch in here as you end, you're going to have a proper stitch to work into, and if I pull that up really close, you can just about see where I've made stitches, slip stitches, and then stitched over them, and where the first stitch of the corner is a chain stitch. Okay, that's my first stitch there, there, and there. Okay, so if you just work round into the corner and then do your chain 3 and make your next stitch exactly as you normally would, you're then going to do exactly the same thing as we've done here. As you finish this round, you're going to join into the top of that chain 3 there. Okay, I'm going to whiz all the way round and catch back up with you when I come to work over these slip stitches here. Okay, so I've come all the way round, and here's the chain 3 that I joined into with a slip stitch, and that's the stitch that I slip stitched through to get into the corner space. So I just need to make another stitch here and then one into the top of the chain 3, and then this is where I've slip stitched into a stitch, and here you can see on the diagonal there at the bottom that's where my third loop is. So by going in through there, I'm actually going under the 2 top loops and the slip stitch, and then just make my stitch absolutely as normal, so the base of the stitch looks exactly the same as the ones next to it. And then I would just join as normal into the top of the chain 3 with a slip stitch. Okay, so as these work up, there's no line like we get here. Let me just show you again. Let's just undo that last little bit. Okay, so here's the stitch. We finished here by joining to the top of the chain 3 with a slip stitch, then made a slip stitch into the next stitch and through into the corner space. Okay, making sure that when we made that slip stitch, we went under the top 2 loops exactly as if we were making a normal stitch, not catching that 3rd loop from the back. So we make our stitch to finish the row exactly the same as we normally would, and then join to the top of our chain with a slip stitch. Okay, so again on this stitch here we've got the 2 top loops and we've got that 3rd loop, so we need to make sure our hook goes between them, and we can make the slip stitch and then slip stitch into the corner space, so that we've got a totally normal stitch to work into there, and the base of our next round works over that slip stitch, looking exactly the same as the ones next to it. With simple squares, this is the easy way to do it. If you're working on a pattern where colour changes are required, but you've decided for your own reasons that you want to work just in one colour, then this is a technique that you can use as well to, you know, if you finish for instance here and you need to start here, then you can slip stitch through those rows, through those stitches to the end of the row and start your repeat in a slightly different position. If you're working with single crochets, you don't normally get this seam effect, although sometimes you can, just for the chain 1 that you use to rise up to the next row. It can have a slightly lumpy or seamed effect, so you can do exactly the same thing with single crochet squares or with half doubles, and obviously if you're using treble stitches. This is double crochet, that's US terms. So again, the corner is where we've moved into each time, and we don't get that seam in the middle of our square. You can use this technique as well with hexagons, with circles. It's not going to work because you've got no corner to work into. So squares, triangles, hexagons, it works perfectly to do this and have a totally seamless square. Okay, thanks for watching.